I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is part 2 for my video Cuttalossa Road. This is a painting that I began in another previous video where I showed you how I did a watercolor underpainting, a powdered paint overlay and wash off, and then more painting on top of that. So it's been a 3-part process, and this is all part 3, where I am doing the 3rd layer. Only part 2 of the videos, though. Cuttalossa Road is a beautiful road in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that winds through hills, old mills, over streams, beautiful forest, and beautiful sights. I hope you'll enjoy the video. We've slowed down the speed a little bit so you can catch more details, and we'd appreciate your feedback on the speed as it is. I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. Now let's paint. I am detailing the road. I'm going over the darks with Payne's Gray, Indigo, and Purple. I'm also bringing out more darks on the tree trunks because some of the colors faded a little bit in the last layer. The trees in the foreground should be the darkest because they're closest to the viewer. As we move back into the picture space, the trees get lighter. I'm foresting the hillside and the slope that goes up. And as I stated before, the tree trunks on slopes, I've noticed from observation, grow at a slant to the slope. So the point is facing downhill and the slant is going up the hill. That really helps to show the space and the realism of this kind of tree growth. The way this space is set up in this composition is there is a stream running along the side of the road on the left. Just beyond the stream is the hillside going up. And then there's a fence that runs along the side of the road as well. And I suppose that is a deterrent to keep traffic from skidding into the stream and down that little slope. At the bottom of the hill, there's an old stone bridge that crosses the stream, and then the road continues onward. I'm using a fine brush to sketch in the fence and the posts that go along the side of the road and give them more detail. I'm shadowing the bottom of the slope and putting in some undergrowth tangles with small brush strokes, as well as some more short sapling type trees. In one of my previous layers, in preparing this painting, I had applied a lot of masking fluid as well. The masking fluid is alongside of the trees where the blizzard blew in snow that stuck to the trees. There's also masking fluid all over the road and on some of the snowy slopes on either side. I have not yet taken the masking fluid off, so that's going to add a whole new level of work when I do, but it will keep my fresh whites preserved. Moving up into the sky, I begin to paint in some of the many, many small branches that spread out into the sky from these tall, thin trees. And this is a process that will take quite a while. But you can see that I'm using the very tip of my brush where I want the branches to be very thin. And I'm bearing down a little harder on the brush when I want the branches to be thicker. Trees and their branches grow in many different directions and many different types of shapes. Some trees will have tall, long, thin, straight branches. And some trees will have windy, twisty, curly branches. If you try to rush your tree and paint all the branches going in the same kind of general configuration, it might look very nice. It might look like a tree. But if you want the tree to look more realistic, I would encourage you to take a look at the tree you're painting and how the branches grow. Make sure you include some overlap, some thinner ones, and some thicker ones. Looks like it's time to take that masking fluid off at last. This is going to be interesting to see what I come up with underneath of it. This road had a lot of snow on it, perhaps some melted snow and some water. It was pretty messy. So I left a lot of masking right down the road and I tried to observe the directionality lines so that I could keep the perspective suggested with the masking as well. And then I paint in some more trees. I'm removing the masking from the areas around the fence, as well as on top of the fence posts. And now I'm removing the masking from the sides of the trees, where I painted it to show the blown on snow from the blizzard. I used masking lines all throughout the forest as well, because some of the trees were entirely covered with snow and were very white. When you paint on a lot of fine lines of masking fluid, it takes a while to get it off. And as you've heard, the longer you let it stay on your paper, days, a week, the harder it is to get off. It takes a while. I found when I left masking fluid on for more than 2 weeks, it sometimes really won't come off at all very well. It just leaves nasty looking smears and gray blots. So I try to always get my masking fluid off within a week at the very most. I'm using an eraser to take it off here. I've also used my fingertips and I've taken a rag to get it off. And once it's all off, you can see the white lines going all through the forest. And I think they look interesting. Now it's time to tone them down. By that, I mean I'm going to blend some of the white edges into the tree with a little bit of shading. I'm going to cover over hard, angular, geometric edges because they don't look natural and soften them into curves. I'm going to shade the bottoms of some of the branches that are covered with white so that the branches are detailed and look more clear against all that white. And I'm going to paint over some of the white entirely because I always add a little more masking fluid than I think I need because it's easy to cover over whites, but it's not very easy to put them on. In fact, it's just about impossible. I work from right to middle to left because I'm left-handed. I find that destroys less work and smears less wet paint, and it works best for me. As a right-handed person, you might want to follow the exact opposite and work from left to right. This part of the branch development and shading of the snow on the trees took a lot of time. I wanted to make it look right. And as I've said before, my iPad is sitting there because I have my reference picture uploaded on the screen, and I'm referring to it constantly to get ideas of how this really looks and trying to copy it in my watercolor. I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but the powdered black paint that I used in one of the underlayers for this painting is or becomes water soluble when you paint over top of it and actually turns into black paint. So you can use it to shape the painting that you're going on top of it with. Or you can let it just be textural in appearance and leave it alone. But it adds an interesting opportunity to your painting. I demonstrate how I apply that powder and wash it off in this video series in part 1. Breaking in, you could see I'm still painting trees, as well as detailing them and shading them. And believe me, I did many hours of painting trees and little branches for this painting. But it was something that I just loved doing because I loved the trees, I loved the composition, and it was a really challenging and interesting painting to work on. Moving down to the road. The first thing I'm doing is taking a damp brush with a little gray on it and subduing the shadows, or I'm sorry, subduing the white reflections and snow. I'm going over them, I'm softening the edges of them, and I'm putting some horizontal lines across them. Because they were all perfectly straight and normal before. When that's dry, I'm coming back and touching up on some of the tree shadows and snow shadows that didn't work quite right before I return to the road. I'm also darkening and adding another layer of depth to the foreground trees and enhancing the branches that seem important for directionality and composition. Getting in very tight here with a small brush. I'm working to show the structure of the bridge, being very careful to preserve the areas where I masked off to show some caps of snow on top of the stone of the bridge. I'm going over my fence to make some of the wooden rails a little darker and showing the bridge peeking out between some of them. I'm painting a little shadow around each cap of snow on top of the fence posts. I turn it upside down to check for balance and to see if any areas look overdeveloped or need some additional work. This also helps me to reach some spots that are a little bit more hard to get to. This is a tall, thin piece of paper. So this is a helpful way to paint some of the tree branches. Do you see how curvy and twisty some of these branches are? They become part of an intriguing study in shape and form when they're looked at so closely and then painted, as opposed to a bunch of straight branches that all are the same thickness, the same direction. I think it adds to your composition if you work with the branches just a little bit longer, or in this case, for a couple hours longer. Back right side up, I'm making some final branches. Something I like to do with a path or a road with trees growing on each side is meet the branches from each side of the road in the middle and make a canopy or an archway. I think it looks very inviting, and I've done that here where the branches meet each other and overlap and intertwine. I'm detailing the sides of the bank here where the snow was plowed aside or pushed aside to develop the dimensionality of how it works, sloping up and then down on the side of the road. I'm increasing some shadows and some slopes on both sides of the road. And getting close to being done with the painting, my eye is searching all around different areas to see what needs to be added or accented or brought out or clarified. In the photograph I was looking at for a reference, I noticed there was just the faintest touches of color in the snow. So I enhanced that a wee bit, but I added some rose to the snow and some blues and purples. And I think if you look closely at the snowbanks, you'll see that. I liked how it looked. There's a little bit of gold in there too. These would have been colors from the sky and the sun's effect through the clouds. So even on a bleak winter day, there's little touches of color. And that was something I had fun with in this painting as well. The last strokes are going on. It's done. I hope you enjoyed my video, Cuttalossa Road, and that you'll give it a thumbs up. Ring the bell below to subscribe, and you won't miss any future videos. There's more links below too. You could look at my Facebook art page, my blog, my products that I like to use, as well as art products that I make. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.